Hi, Leia. I guess you are first. Uh, Having this is it's always a challenge getting this thing up here. Welcome, welcome to the our first early morning. It's early morning, I guess, for some of us here. Anyhow, I'm Bill Sanders, and this is Watch Art Sci, the art and science of watch collection. And today, what I want to talk about. Oh, by the way, Leia, can you hear me? Hi, Enrique. Good afternoon in Spain. Buenas tardes, Enrique. Can you hear me? Okay. Hi, Carlos. Hi, Panama. Can you? Is the sound all right? Can you hear me, guys? Hi, Leia. Can you hear? Okay. Sounds okay. Great. Okay, good. Okay, terrific. Hi, Krasmir. It's late afternoon in Bulgaria. I was just in Hungary next door not too long ago. Hey, Tennessee Mike, how you doing, man? God, it's really early for you guys, I know. Hey, Joe, Joseph, Klaus, Klaus, how's it going? Um, Turkey Vulture, hi, man. Okay, good. Well, I finally got everything going okay. And oh yeah, oh from Taiwan. Oh great, welcome. Well, this is what I was hoping today we could have Asia, and so I know it's late night there for you, and but it's not 3 o'clock in the morning like our afternoon one is. Hey, Tree Dillinger, and as I said, hey, TextPad, how's it going, man? uh, First time I can catch up the live chat. Okay, well, let's get going. What I wanted to talk about is the process, I guess, of a movement going from this is something that we sort of fixed up to something that's a real one. Hi, Gilberto. Yeah, you made it. Good. Uh, so anyway, so let's talk about that. By the way, people always say I never talk about my watch that I'm wearing, so I'm going to tell you this is a FP Journe um, chronomet resonance. Okay, so I've done that. Um, so let's talk about the when a movement that a company has sort of fixed up. Um, the When does it become saying, okay, now this is an in-house movement? Um, in our last recorded video on the Mula Glashura, they had what they called I keep wanting to call it a grasshopper, but it's woodpecker. They have a little woodpecker, what do they call it, regulator, and it looks a lot like a swan's neck, but I think a swan's neck has a little more play, okay? And the whole idea of the woodpecker regulator control is that the screw that goes into this side, and this is the spring, and it always keeps the arm that it's moving back and forth to regulate the whether to make it faster or slower. So it's always there. And so if you bang your watch, it's not going to throw it off one way or the other. And so that's sort of a cool thing. Hey, Flippin' Zippo. Um, hey, Paul, how's it going? But 9:30 in the morning here in Connecticut isn't really early, but it's not. Because I'm hoping that some people like Tennessee Mike was able to make it. Okay, and also Asia. Hey, Flippin' Zippo, how's it going, man? All right. Hey, but we know it must be too early for Clyde. I miss Clyde. All right. So let's talk about that. All right. So you got so you have a watch. Here's an example of one. This is my this is Maurice Lacroix, and Maurice Lacroix is one of those companies that has used other people's movement. In this particular case, the movement that it had, I don't think you can see it, is a Jacquet 736, which is sort of a cool movement because it's a shape movement and nobody's quite sure how it came into being, which makes it more interesting. It was originally done by a guy named, I forgot the first two names, Jacquet, and then Jacquet had to go to prison because he was involved in a combination of armed robbery and some other stuff. And so as a result, he had to go away for a while, and then it was taken over by somebody else. Now, to what extent this was done from an ibauche of, some people guessed it was an ibauche from a Pazoo 7001, which was bought by ETA, so it'd be an ETA 7001. And what they did was that they took it and they, hang on, see if I can open it up here. They took it, and let's see if you can see it now. They took it and they shaped it so it's got a tonneau shape to it, or pretty rectangular actually. And so they really did a lot to it. So with something like this, to say, well, you know, that's they've done quite a bit to that, and it's not just the same old Pazoo 7001, which was considered to be a very thin movement, and it's used a lot, still used today in a lot of you'll see a lot of watch companies with it. Now, on the other hand, Maurice Lacroix had some other movements that were based on ETAs and Solitas and God knows what else. And so it's, hey, Sandro, from Norway, it's not too late there today. So there's you know, when do we say, okay, well, now you have a movement that, even though it uses a lot of the other movement, let's say some of the basics of it, it really has done enough to it to call it, we'll call it its own movement. Now, you take some of these award-winning watches like Raison, those, you know, they're really cool watches. They do all of these things, but they're running on ETA movement. So, you know, things get really tricky. Now, going back to the to what we were talking about initially, is that Mula Glashütte puts in their woodpecker, the woodpecker regulator control in all of their watches, and they use all different kinds of movements. So, which one is it? Mike, yeah, Tennessee Mike, that's a good one. What about Dawn Blues and so on? That's a perfect example, because these guys, they started off with a some kind of ET. I'm not sure what kind it was. It may have been a 6498 or 6497, but I may be wrong about that. Hi, Kyle, and you're like, my sweater. This sweater, by the way, is from one of the Baltic states. It's from Estonia. We visited Estonia a few years ago, and my wife and I got these. These are like sort of a folk pattern, and I like them. They're not cool, but they're very warm. All right. 99 series should be based on the 6498. Probably so, Leah. They have a lot of these things, but you know, where's the point where you say, okay, hey, you guys have done a lot to this? Let me give you an example, another example. I've got a Harry Winston, and my Harry Winston has Gerard Perregaux movement in it, and of course they call it something else like jerks. They no need to do that. But then it has a retrograde, a bi-retrograde by Agenhor. In other words, Jean-Marc Wiederrecht, which is just like fantastic. But the movement is clearly Girard-Perregaux. So is it sort of a, I don't know, maybe there's these things, maybe we ought to look into the whole concept of a hybrid movement, not like the, what's it called? Not like the spring drive in Grand Seiko, but rather somebody who takes one movement and adds enough kind of stuff to it that things are really different. I'm thinking more like resonance watches where they have the really amazing watches. Okay, so what do you think? Hi, Jack. How you doing, man? So what do you guys think? What would it take? I don't think the woodpecker regulator is enough, but it's something. What else would you need on top of like one thing like that? Now, by the way, too, the movements, the ibauche of a movement was it had everything in the movement except for the escapement components. Okay, now if it doesn't have the escapement components, which we'll say includes the hairspring, then you got one of the most important components in a watch that's missing, and that's got to be supplied somehow by the watchmaker. So what would count? What do you guys think? What would count as a true blue new movement? Power reserve, larger barrels. Okay, or multiple barrels. That might be something. Who is it? When Christopher Ward decided to make their own movement, the SH-21, that was what they did. They said, well, we're going to put in 2 barrels. Now, they didn't put in what might be considered more high horology with parallel arrangements on their barrels. They had a serial arrangement which extended the charge on them, which is fine. But and of course they made that thing from ground up, so that's one of their own. But it's certainly something I think I'd consider. I mean, if I had a 6498 and somebody had worked in, let's say, double barrels, and it gave it a 7-day charge to it, that's not the same one that I'm used to. One of the other things that's sort of I'm worried about. This is a Chinese company called Perpetual, and let me see if you can see this. And this is their watch called a Perpetual Regulator, and they have a Seagull movement in it. And the Seagull movement that I'm used to dealing with is simply a knockoff of the 6497, 6498. And actually, they do a pretty good job of it. But this one is an automatic, plus the fact that it's for a regulator. I mean, this is has a special designation just for regulators. Why is that important? Because they have to put the post in different places for a regulator. Some watches, I think that one of the German companies that uses an ETA 6498, what they do is they take the hour post from the middle of the watch and put it up at 12 o'clock, and then leave the small seconds at 6 o'clock. And so they do it that way. Now, that's some modification, but isn't one of theirs. Hey, Pete, how you doing, man? Fahrenheit 451, Urban Jurgensen D10 escapement. Okay. Okay, give me second generation Roger Smith coaxial Langus finish and Remontois and the big R's marketing. Yeah, okay, that'll do the trick. But that's not creating a monster. Hey, Tippy, how you doing, man? Okay, let's see. So if you put in a power reserve indicator, thing about a power reserve indicator, let me see if I got one here with a power reserve. I got one in my case somewhere. This one has a power reserve indicator. I don't know if you can see it. It's down here. That's actually 12 o'clock. Now that power reserve indicator is it's simply something added to it. Now, if you take an FP Journe chronomet blue, it's exactly like the chronomet Surveying, except it doesn't have a power reserve indicator. Well, I mean, it does. There are some other differences too, but as far as the movement's concerned, they use identical movement, but one they just added a power reserve indicator to. Okay, can a watch be considered high horology and not have an in-house movement? Oh boy, yeah. Oh, hey Pete. Let's see. I would say yes in this respect. And I think it's also, Mike, we really got to reconsider the whole notion of high horology. High horology was developed for the watchmakers, not for the collectors. And I think we really have to think about that. Now, if I got a watch and it had a Vasseur movement in it, and there's some really nice Vasseur movement, and they added some, let's say, some engraving and a little additional on laws, not that they need any in the first place. Would that be high horology? Yeah, I think so. The first watch I had, I guess, well, the second watch I had that would be considered high horology was a Vacheron Constantin overseas. Excuse me. And it had, I think, a Girard Perregaux movement that had been modified by Vacheron Constantin. Everybody considered that high horology. But, then in 2016, when they came out with their own movement with the 5100, oh boy, now that to me was like really good watchmaking, which I think is more important than the designation of high horology, even though it was considered to be both. It's like, hey, Klaus, it's like selling a rubber band by the meter and foot requires high moral standards. Okay. I get it now. Selling rubber band by the foot. All right, that's funny. Hey, Krasner, Krasimir, what about the Nomos Alpha caliber? It's modified enough to be considered in-house. It's really funny. I got to hand it to Nomos. Nomos, when they first started, when they had their own DUW calibers, they were sort of very about the Alpha, and the reason for it is that the Alpha was essentially our friend, the Pazu 7001, that had been totally done by Nomos, but it was the same. Everything was the same, except I think they made the parts themselves or something like that. And that's sort of a funny thing. So I don't know, Pazu, whatever. ETA, that'll make it easier. All right. I like Nomos movements. Yeah, so do I. Nomos makes its own movements from the ground up. This is where some watches things get really problematic. It turns out that Maurice Lacroix was a much better watch company than I realized. I just thought it was, they were banging out watches with cases. And when I got this one, just because I got it for the movement, I thought, my God, this is really a nice watch. It's steel and so forth, and it's extremely high quality workmanship on it and everything else, even though it has a movement by someone else. Now that same movement is used by several other companies. I got the Dunhill version. There's an RGM version of it too, but you get the same movement, which means that your watch is working pretty much the same way. After Jacquet had to go to prison, his company was renamed La Joux Pereire, and it's still around today, but it's owned by citizens. So, it's still in the same location and everything. And there's another one called, oh God, it's not, another watch making company in the same town. What's the name of it? La Salle something or other. And the son, Jacques' son, is running it. Not something like Centro. It's a movement company. They're doing some interesting things too. I don't know. Okay, I think in-house is more of a marketing issue than a movement issue. It's like having a Shelby modify your Mustang engine is a Ford or Shelby. Good point, Tex Pat. Yeah, I tell you, if we just look at the movement itself, and we'll take that, and maybe we need to get away even from the tiers and so forth. The reason I even began to say, hey, let's divide it into tiers, is to give us some sense of the value. Unfortunately, a lot of the stuff I used was from what they called watch ranking, and watch ranking had it set up pretty much along the lines of what was before. They based it mainly on how much these watches cost. So, I think that's something else we probably need to reconsider. Hey, what's the quality of this watch? There's a watch I'd really like to have, but I don't have $54,000 for it, and that's a Grandfield Remontois 1942 or 1941, one of the two. Anyway, that's a beautiful watch because it has a Remontois Egalite, which is something I think is really a wonderful part of the watch. F.P. Jordan has one. Who else has one? There's some other, Lang and Hein have one, which is just delicious. That one's $70,000. Whew. So what I'm hoping that maybe somebody will come along with one like that. Now, those watches are very special. When we were talking to, Stephen Forsay at the Watch Time show, I asked him, I said, how come more people don't do that? It's this wonderful thing for true mechanical craftsmanship and doing something that's actually practical, and that is constant force. And he said, it's hard. It's very difficult to do. And that's why they had done one. But, it's hard to do. And so it takes a certain kind of craftsmanship. Some of the other reasons is that they may not be a certain element put into a movement, may not be that hard, but it's really hard to set up for mass production. So these are some things I think that we need to ask. I think my IWC on Genu has a caliber 80110, but not sure if it's a real in-house. Does anyone know? Pete, take a look at Watchbase. See, the thing that really, I think, gets me more than anything else isn't so much whether a watch has an in-house movement or not. Rather is that they make up a fairy tale about it. That's the only thing that really bothers me. Someone says, like someone from my IWC says, we're running this thing off a ETA 6497. Okay, not a problem. And so, you look at it, it's got the small seconds at 9 o'clock. Hey, yeah, that's typical 6497. But for them to give it some kind of phony baloney name that it indicates that it's by IWC, that's a little aggravating. Hi, Neil. How's it going, man? And they retracted your message for some reason, Neil. Say it again. Hi, James. James 2. Okay, hard to talk about movement modification in-house and not mention IWC. Yeah, IWC, you take someone, now IWC does have its own movement. And this is what is so aggravating about it. Hi, Willie, how's it going, man? You say, Willie, guys, Woodpecker makes a movement hybrid in-house. I would say more like hybrid outhouse than in-house. I would say it adds something to it that makes him more of a watchmaker. Look, one of the things is that there are a bunch of us who we refer to ourselves as pretentious watchmakers. And I've made a bunch of watches, and people really like the watches. But what then I might put in a 6497 or 6498, put on a dial, put on the hands, uh, buy a case, buy some bands, put it together, and Bob's your uncle. Now the whole thing is going to be under 120 bucks, maybe under $200 if I really get fancy. But that's what it cost me to make it. Period. Uh, who was it? I made one for my son, and I had some problems with it, and because of my lack of skills as a watchmaker. But I'm really a watch assembler. And so some of these companies are doing the same thing. And so when you see a watch and they have some phony name for the movement that makes it sound like it was made in-house, and they're charging you 5,000 bucks for it, or 3,000, or even 2,000. I know, you say, wait a minute. If you're going to put in an inexpensive movement, there's nothing wrong with that because there's some very good ones. In fact, EA has a hierarchy of quality in their movements based on how many positions it's been tested for. I don't know. Hi, Tigum. How you doing, man? Um, in-house design, in-house manufacture. Okay, yeah. There is that. That's a good point too. Um, apart from more decoration, do some brands do additional regulation on base movement? Well, I suppose that the woodpecker regulator is, but then if you're talking about essentially what you have when you have, let's say, regulated from or tested at these different positions, you're talking about having the crown up, crown on the side, crown down, um, face up. Those are the different positions, and there's 6 of them. And so when they say they're tested at 6 positions, at some positions they get better or worse uh, frequency on it or accuracy. Okay, and they have to what they come up with is an average, and so they'll say, okay, this is the best. This is where we can have an average from all those positions, but each position they do some regulation to find out about that. Now, okay, once it leaves the shop, maybe it doesn't stay put that way. Now, one thing I will say about the woodpecker regulator, whatever it's set at, it does a good job of keeping them. Okay, hey Jamie, how you doing, man? Watchmakers make the whole shebang, not just assembled from different locations of the globe. Well, I make them from different locations on the globe, but I'm not selling them. Um, anyway, it's well, what I've done. I found some. There's some interesting things that you can do, and you can make a really good movement. Okay, anyone come across Yima movements? French company supposedly in-house. Neil, I don't know. I haven't. I don't know about that company. There's this young French guy that makes these incredibly beautiful watches, and they wind up with a key and their wristwatch. Really cool watches, but they start at 30,000 bucks. I That's a lot of money. So anyway, uses Seiko movement. Tigum. They use Seiko. Hey, Dr. A and B, how you doing, man? Um, Jamie, that was a big companies. Not me. Not my pretentious watchmakers. We've been copied by someone. Don't buy. Don't buy a ripoff of pretentious watchmakers' watch. All right, be careful. They make counterfeits. Uh, okay, let's see. Um, some makers will make almost everything themselves except the jewels and hairspring. Does that disqualify them? Oh, heck no. There's some, I mean, you take, for example, I think, well, you take MB&F, for example. MB&F has some of the finest watches anybody makes. They use hairsprings by H. Moser. H. Moser makes about between 1,000 and 2,000 watches a year, but they make something like 50,000 hairsprings because their hairsprings are so good. And they're used by the very high end, but the high end ones don't want to tell anybody. They say, we make them ourselves. So the only one that we've learned so far that it's okay to say is MB&F. Okay, actually, when choosing a watch, I look for reliable and well-finished movements rather than in-house, but it is also in-house as has those characteristics. Yeah, that's usually what you want. I think that either that or if a watch has a Vaussure movement in it, a lot of times I think I'd rather have a watch with a Vaussure movement in it than a Panerai with a what's it called P9000 in it. Have you seen those movements? I mean, they are in-house, which is a good thing for Panerai because they've been lying through their teeth for a long time before I think they finally got their comeuppance, and people basically told them to put up or shut up, and they put up, and good for them for doing it. Okay, what are you guys up to now? Yeah, truth in advertising would be great. I agree with that. And there's some, yeah, Hamilton does. And there are a lot of companies that do. Steinhardt. I like Steinhardt. I respect Steinhardt because they're totally on it. Mula Glasuda is up to a point. It goes, we got SW200, SW300, SW400. Then we have a magic number that we use for these that are some other things. Their Glasuda manufacturers are 64.98 for Christ's sake. How is that I don't know. Let's see. You still don't like IWC because of this issue. Last year, Basil World released in-house. Well, yeah, the thing is, Dr. A and B, it's not so much whether they have one or not. It's whether they're honest about it. If they, if you look at the IWC offerings, the ones that are in-house cost more than the ones that they buy, off the shelf. And so, I'm okay if they say that. Say, yeah, you want to save some money. This is, the rest of it, a case, whatever is by us. But the movements by somebody else, so we don't have to charge as much. That makes sense. That makes perfect sense to me. And that's what they're doing, except they're doing it and it makes them look like idiots, in my opinion. You make a few watches of your own. I mean, join the pretentious watchmakers. It won't put you down. And I've broken movements left and right. I got a drawer full of broken movements that I'm in there trying to get a bust up or a piece goes flying into the black hole of where all movement pieces go. Hi, DP 4547. Bothers me that tweak or enhance pre-existing movements are advertised as in-house. Every watch company should give credit to the original movement. I agree. Or what the base is. A lot of them will have done a lot of stuff to the movement, but have a base of, I don't care if they have a hamster and a running wheel to run the thing. Just tell us what it is. I mean, we're consumers, and we spend a lot of money on these things. My God, I was looking at that. I thought, my God, that thing. My car didn't cost that much. Okay. Don't believe any house in my IWC. Yeah, see, this is what really hurts it. Breitling came out with the BO1. That's it. That's their movement. And their other in-house movements are based on the BO1. But then they have these other ones that are the B something or other, and they're not Breitling, they're somebody else. Why not say so? They got their own movement. And that's one thing I will hand to Panerai. Panerai put together their own movement, the P9000. They base everything else on the P9000, which is fine. By the way, too, if you look at most other watch companies with their in-house movement, they will have one base movement and everything else will be growing on that. Not all of them, but a lot of them are that way. And there's nothing wrong with, like, let's say, for example, you have an Omega with some kind of ETA-based movement, but then they have the coaxial escapement. Now that to me is a huge thing. So anyhow, okay. Well, look, guys, I got to run. In fact, I'm over a little, but I want to thank you all for coming and putting up with me with my funny-looking sweaters. And so let's see. Oh, tomorrow we have another review, and I think you're going to like it. Okay. All right, guys. Anyway, take care, and you can always leave a comment if you like in the comment section, because this thing becomes, I guess, a permanent thing later. They save it somehow. Hasta la vista. Hey, Willie T. Take care.